and welcome to my Studio Ghibli movie review video. I got curious about reading the book versus watching the movie and kind of figuring out which was better, which ones that we liked better as a family. I wanted to kind of share in order what our least favorite to favorites were. So my least favorite Studio Ghibli is Mary and the Witch's Flower. Now, I read The Little Broomstick by Mary Stewart. I really enjoyed The Little Broomstick. This is the story about a girl named Mary who is living with her Aunt Charlotte for the summer, and she goes out because she's following a local cat, and she discovers this very beautiful flower. Through the flower and through coming across a broomstick, she manages to end up having a flying broomstick. There ends up being a local boy who gets involved, and she ends up in this very perilous situation with two nefarious characters who are doing inappropriate and cruel things in laboratories with animals. And so she and this local boy end up in a situation with the cats, trying to help the animals and get home safely. The movie adaptation that they made for that from Studio Ghibli, I really did not like. First of all, the focus really became about the witch's flower, hence the title, and the ending just deviated for me so much from what the original book had done, and it just was really weird to my way of thinking. It just was not congruent with anything else kind of that had happened, and it just was very odd. But I would say reading The Little Broomstick, if you can find it, is a really quick, cute read. So the next movie was Princess Kaguya. This is based on the tale of the bamboo cutter, which is a Japanese folktale. I really preferred the movie Princess Kaguya to the folktale. The folktale is very short, whereas this really expounded on a lot of emotions and her growth. Some of the things that I did not like about the movie is that in the actual folktale, the father really is not such a putz, whereas in the movie, he's really portrayed negatively. The other thing is that the movie brings in a love interest, and the folktale doesn't really have that. In fact, the folktale almost seems to infer a different love interest. And so I think that kind of deviation and bringing that in, it was not satisfactory, I guess, to me to have that extra added love interest for a variety of reasons that I don't want to get into because of spoilers and everything. But that was the part of this that I really didn't like. What I did enjoy about this movie is when she was dealing with really strong emotions of anger and disappointment and fear, the artist drew that into the movie. So it wasn't just your typical Studio Ghibli. There was black and white hand-drawn art that kind of moved across the screen to infer her emotions. And I thought that was a really powerful interpretation and one of the reasons why I did like this movie. Next on the list is Kikis Delivery Service. This is a book by Aiko Kadono, and I did read the book and watch the movie. I watched the movie first and then read the book. I didn't really think there was a huge difference in between the book and the movie. One thing I will say is the ending of the book is, to my mind as a parent, much more satisfying than the movie was. So this is a story about Kiki, who is a multi-generational witch, and at 13 she is expected to go off and find her own town and find her own purpose as a witch in a community. And she does just that. And this is her kind of figuring out herself and what her gifts are and how she can use those to kind of make a living and make it out on her own in this town far away from her family. The movie does what most movies do, which is make a little bit more of an intense climactic ending with, you know, peril and safety issues and all of that that is not in the book. I know that there is like a cult following for Kiki's Delivery Service, and while it was not my favorite, I think if you are interested in kind of seeing what Studio Ghibli is all about, Kiki's Delivery Service is a very safe toe dip into that world. Next is Ronia and The Robbers. This is a book by Astrid Lindgren that we love. It is the story about Ronia, who is the daughter of a robber, and she's living in one area. She goes out into the forest and there's a lot of magical elements in there, but she comes into contact with a boy who is the son of this enemy family robber. So it's kind of your typical Romeo Juliet trope. Two kids of two warring families end up coming together and developing a friendship. It is the epitome of wild and free homeschool. Amazon has 26 episodes, and they're pretty long episodes. They're like 20 minutes to 25-minute episodes. It is kind of expensive. I did use our Kindle credit in order to be able to purchase it so that we could watch it, and we have not finished it because it's actually about 9 or 10 hours, I think. It's huge, but it really is family friendly, and we love the personality of Ronia, and the episodes stay fairly close, again, for what we've watched, to the book. This has fast become one of our favorite Studio Ghiblis to watch as a family. The last two that I have to share, we as a family kind of differ. I think my husband and I prefer one and my kids prefer another. So I'm gonna go ahead and share what my kids loved as the #1 spot, and I'll share that as second, and that is Howl's Moving Castle. Howl's Moving Castle is a book by Diane Wynne Jones. It is actually a pretty complex magic building world, in that Sophie is a young girl who works in a haberdashery that her father owns. Her father passes away. She and her two sisters end up remaining with the stepmother. While there could be that Cinderella element in there, it really doesn't seem to be that way, but each of the other sisters is kind of farmed out to develop a career, but Sophie stays in the haberdashery. She's got skills with making hats. And it turns out that through a series of events, she offends the Witch of the Waste, and this witch puts a spell on her that ages her and turns her into a very old looking woman. She ends up taking out on an adventure on her own from that, and I loved Sophie's character so much, and she ends up coming across Howl and his moving castle, and while she's kind of grown up being told stay away from him, he is dangerous. She ends up living in the castle, and there it is, like I said, it is pretty complex. There's a lot of different characters, a lot of different connections that pull in, but the book I loved and was phenomenal. The movie I also loved, but because I had read the book, I was really looking for a different resolution and different character, different elements. So in the movie, war is a big part of what the issues are that Howl has to kind of overcome. And in the book, that is not the case. It's the Witch of the Waste that really is what he needs to overcome. It's still phenomenal, and again, my kids loved it. There's romance, there's adventure, there's magic, there's evil that you need to try to overcome, and so again, Howl's Moving Castle is a good cult Studio Ghibli classic. So our favorite, as far as me and my husband, is Erity. And this is made after The Borrowers, which is written by Mary Norton. And I read The Borrowers as a child. My oldest has read it. My husband has not, so all he's known is kind of Erity. But we watched it in our camper when we had gone on a trip this spring, and just springtime with the cinematography and the beauty of that, and the connection between the daughter and the father and the daughter and the human boy was just so beautiful to behold, and it just has become a favorite of mine. So The Borrowers is a story about little people who live under the floorboards of your house, and they collect things and they just borrow with them. And the idea is they're not thieves, they're not robbers, they're borrowers. And the book goes through this big, huge change and turmoil for the family, and the story of the movie also follows that. There is a little bit of a nefarious character, which again, for little kids might be a little bit creepy, but for the most part, it's a very wholesome movie, and the book and the movie basically follow along in a similar fashion. So again, for me, it was the cinematography and the spring aesthetic that Erity has, along with just the sense of adventure that was there. So that's the rating of the Studio Ghibli movies. Number 1 is Erity. Number 2 is Howl's Moving Castle. Number 3 is Ronia. Number 4 is Kikis Delivery Service. Number 5 is Princess Kaguya. And number 6 is Mary and the Witch's Flower. If you've watched any Studio Ghiblis that you have also loved and maybe read or have a different perspective, please leave it in the comments below. I would love to know what you think. Thanks for watching. Until next time. Whew, hot flashes.